Okay, welcome everyone. It's been a while since before Pesach, before Passover, that I've given a class. And here we are again. This is going to be the Parsha Shmini class, the Parsha of the Week class, which is usually done or should be done on Monday. But here we are on Wednesday, and we're going to do some makeup. This is the makeup for Monday class. All right. So we'll talk a little bit about the Parsha, a little bit about Pesach, a little bit about the miracle that some interesting things that are happening. In as much as we are always looking out for the signs of Mashiach in the world. One of the signs of Mashiach is the rectification of the Gentile nations, including the elevation of the Edomites. So we've spoken a lot about that. Edom is the fourth exile, and we've seen certain things happen. As mentioned many times, Edom starts off by the descendants of Esav, and they had a country in the side of Israel called Edom. But then the leaders of the city of the country of the land of Edom made their way towards Italy, and then they became the founders of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire then evolved eventually into the Christianity and the Christian world. And with all of its offshoots, we've spoken a lot about the United States of America, how it's going to be elevated into Mashiach and so on and so forth. But there are definitely certain parts of Edom that are not, that have not been, say purified, but that need to be removed before Mashiach comes. It's interesting that one can't ignore that the Pope died on, it was actually Monday morning in Rome. Over here in LA, it was still the end of the eighth day of Pesach, which is the Mashiach day. We know the eighth day of Pesach is when Mashiach's light dominates in the world very strongly. One of the great prophecies it says about Mashiach is the Dvalu Mashiach Bahar Tzion, that Mashiach and the saviors of the Jewish people, which some say Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David together, they will ascend the mountain of Zion, Lishbot as Har Esav, to judge the mountain of Esav, which is the entire Edom empire. So we know that the eighth day of Pesach, the whole Pesach, is all about redemption. The latter days of Pesach is when we emphasize the future redemption, which is now the current redemption. And the last day of Pesach itself, especially towards evening, is when the Baal Shem Tov, founder of Hasidism, instituted that we eat a special Mashiach meal. And that is because Mashiach's vibrations and energy is super, super, super intensified during that time. So although in Rome it wasn't Mashiach Suda time, was the day after, but again in New York, it was just about over. Over here in LA, it was just about over. And the Pope died. Then now, generally, celebrating the passing of a Pope is not necessarily one of the things I would do or others would do. This particular Pope was no friend to the Jewish people. He was very, very critical of Israel and always sided in a very, very pathetic way with even didn't steer away from accusing Israel of genocide, which is absolute insanity. So he was not a good guy. In many, many other ways, he steered the entire Christian population away from God's commandments, in the sense that, as they call him, the very woke Pope. Not an entity, so to speak, that comes to greet Mashiach. So I personally believe that the world is a better place, that the Pope is not here anymore. He was no good man. I mean, of course they see him as a saint and so on and so forth, and he might have had a soft heart and whatever, but not necessarily in the right places. So I found it interesting that he died. And he was in the hospital a few weeks ago, but then he got better and he came out. And when he died, it wasn't as a result of his breathing situation that he had earlier. He had a stroke and a heart attack. So it was felt very much like a divine act. So what I thought was really interesting was that the Rebbe's chapter that we started saying just 2 weeks before this chapter. Remember we spoke about the klasa of the Rebbe's age, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's age is 123. And therefore we started saying chapter 124 in Psalms. So if you look in chapter 124 in Psalms, it says over there how the Jewish people are saying, if not for God standing by us, and if not for God watching over us, we would have already been completely destroyed by our enemies. We would have been eradicated by our enemies. We would have been destroyed by our enemies. And it's only because of God's constant providence and kindness that the Jewish people survive in this harsh environment of exile. And then the psalmist, King David, in the end gives a very interesting description. He says, Nafsheinu ketzipar nimlita. Our souls, ketzipar, like a little bird, nimlita, escapes. Our souls are compared, the Jewish soul during the time of exile, is compared like a little bird that got caught in a trap. Mipach yokshim, from the trap of those who want to trap her. So the hunters or whatever it is, they put out a trap. So we see the great big world trying to set up a trap to trap Israel, to trap the Jewish people. Then the verse says, Hapach nishbar, the trap broke, Vanachnu nimlotnu, when we escaped. Most of the times when a bird gets trapped in a bird trap, it can't get out. But in this time, sometimes a miracle happens. The trap breaks and we escaped. And this is supposed to be a metaphor that at certain times in exile, we're surrounded in all sides by enemies, and the Jewish people have no chance against those that stand up against her, like we celebrated by the Seder, when we said the famous passage, that's only God's promise that has stood by Israel and has supported us during the darkest of times. And after they've been in hostile environments for the majority of their history, and we're one of the longest historic people, and we've been everywhere persecuted, and the Jewish people it's by divine providence and divine miracles, and that's expressed very strongly in this psalm, where it says that the trap that has been set up for us, whether those traps were Nazi Germany, whether the trap were the Hamas on October 7th, whether the trap was the Inquisition, whether the traps were the Crusaders, whether the traps were the Roman Empire, whatever it is, the trap, whether it was Stalin and the gulags, and they said, hey, we've gotten them, and there's no way they're going to escape us now. And then suddenly the trap breaks and the little bird flies away. So that's a beautiful depiction. And that is stated in the chapter that we say in honor of the Rebbe now every day, based on the minhag to say one's own chapter of your age in Psalms of the upcoming year. So as Hasidim, we say the Rebbe's chapter. So I found very interesting because pach, the word pach, which it means the trap that broke and that we escaped, pach is 88. And then I realized that the Pope was 88 years old. When and I don't know the good is because he was planning to go to Turkey in May. He was planning, and now he was going to celebrate some Christian something, 1700 years of some event. I don't know what exactly. But going to Turkey meant some wheeling and dealing with the Turkish ruler, whatever his name is, Edrigan, whatever his name is. That guy is no no friend of Israel, a rabid anti-Semite. So when it says Hapach Nishbar, the trap broke, Vanachtan Omlot, no, Pach is 88, I thought it was a little sign, especially since it happened on the 8th day of Passover, Mashiach's day. So I thought it was like, on a spiritual level, the powers of Mashiach that decided, time has come, Mr. Pope, Sir Pope. It's over. Maybe we should make room for a better Pope. Let's see what's going to happen. Let's hope that it's going to be better for the Jewish people. Because until Mashiach is fully revealed, it does make a difference who the Pope is. Afterwards, it won't make much difference, because it will all be dismantled, because everybody will come follow Mashiach. But until then, it does make a difference. So maybe this was the last Pope. Let's hope. But whatever it is, I thought it was interesting that it fit with the verse that says explicitly, Hapach Nishbar, 88. It was a sign, interesting sign. Now, that was not the intention at all of my class today. I just wanted to share that, because that was just an update on Mashiach's current presence in the world, and I was afraid that other rabbi would figure that out before me. So I wanted to be the first one who shares that. I called it. This is my call. Okay. Next. Now all the rabbis can say it already. The Chabadniks only, because the Chabadniks will point out the Rebbe's age as related to what's going on. All right. With that having said, on the lighter side, let's dive deep. The reason I'm diving deep today is because we just came out of the sea, because on the 7th day of Passover, we commemorated going through the sea. And the sea is a deep dive. And the Jewish people, when we went out of Egypt, we went through the sea. It was an experience of great depth. Sages tell us that the experience at the sea was the deepest experience ever. Deepest experience, meaning the deepest experience of experiencing otherworldliness. Because the going through the sea meant that they got to experience the hidden realm. The sea is metaphoric for that which is hidden, that which is concealed. The sea is called the Alma Descasia, just like the sea is a place that the ocean has an incredible world beneath the ocean. As the sages tell us, everything on dry land exists under the water. All creatures of dry land exist over the water in a fish type. There's kelp forests and whatever else they call it, where people go scuba diving, the coral reefs, and then there's mountain areas, and everything under the entire. There's an amazing world under the ocean, and the millions and millions of different types of sea creatures that exists, one more interesting than the other. Yet, unless you go down diving, we don't see it. Today's days we can see it because people have filmed it. Divers have filmed it, but it's an amazing world beneath the water, but it's all hidden. So this idea represents the hidden realms above, the more mystical realm, which is above our physical sensors to be able to see it, touch it, and so forth, which is above and beyond the physical world. That's the sea. So going through the sea on Passover means that every year, it's not just then when they went. So when they went through the sea, we know that they had all this experience. There was never a time that we had such spectacular prophecy, if you might call it. The ability to see what's on the other side, to see the hidden realms, deeper and deeper, the angelic worlds, and even higher than the angels, the celestial realms, higher and higher, all the way to behold God himself. That's why the sages tell us that a maidservant, when they say a maidservant, they're trying to find someone who's not spiritually refined. So the servant, the maidservant, all these people who are not spiritually refined at all, generally would not be privy to a prophetic vision. In order to experience prophecy, you have to be a very refined human being, a very elevated human being. And the sages are trying to tell us that the most simplest of people, the coarsest of people, the most unsophisticated people, spiritually sophisticated, the coarsest, the most, even they got to see what the greatest of prophets didn't see. Basically, they beheld so much so they even saw the infinite light. That's what they saw when they went through the sea. Spectacular. The little children pointed with their finger. They said, "This is my God." Zekela. As much as you can say, seeing God. That's what they. The Midrash even tells us like this. The Midrash says like this: how great are those who went down into the sea? Kama gedola. How great are those who went into the sea? That what? That Moses, how much did he try to get God to agree that he should see him? Moshe asks God, "I want to see you." And God says to Moshe, "No, you can't see me." In the end, finally, God gives in to him and God says, "You can see my back, not my front." Yet the people that went down in the sea, the Midrash says, they said, "Zekeli, this is my God." Which means to a certain degree, they saw, at that moment, they saw even what Moses couldn't see. Obviously, Moses is also one of those who was in the sea, but it was just that moment of just absolute incredible prophecy. And that's what we mean going deep. So now we're going deep as well. What do I want to talk about? I want to talk about the connection of that experience of going into the sea and beholding godliness, and that everybody was able to see that with the time of Mashiach. And with the time that we are preparing ourselves for. Because momentarily, our experience is going to be similar to the experience of going through the sea. So we should ready ourselves for something spectacular. Which some people say, "Oh, that could happen in my lifetime." It's going to happen. And we're holding in a time where it can happen any second. And we're going to see. But what we are going to see is much more than what they saw in the sea. And that's what I want to talk about. What is the difference between the experiences of the time of Mashiach? When we also have a prophecy that Mashiach will take us through a body of water. But we're going to have incredible X-ray vision to see inside the hidden realms. And in the time of Mashiach, it's going to be in a much greater way than it was when they went when they went to the sea. And the difference of the differences that is going to be is, number one, their experience in the sea was a momentary experience. And it was limited in two ways. It was limited that it was only in that space as they were walking through the tunnels that were opened up in the water. So it was limited to a certain space. And it was also limited to a certain time. I don't know exactly, and I don't think it says anywhere, the amount of time the people spent in that aquatic world. I don't think there's any depiction in the Midrash and the sages if it was 15 minutes, how long the tour was. You go into a tour sometimes. If it was a 15-minute tour, a half an hour tour, an hour or an hour, a 90-minute tour, I don't know. Be interesting to know how long that experience, but then it vanished. The people they must have had an amazing, memory of something extraordinary. But the very fact that these people remained the people that they were before, the maidservant didn't become a saint. The people remained who they were before, meant it was some kind of an otherworldly experience. They were lifted up to a complete different realm. But then they returned to their natural selves And when they returned to their natural selves, it was business as usual. When in the time of Mashiach, when we're going to have this experience, it is going to be ongoing forever and ever. Once our eyes are opened up to this deeper vision, to this prophetic state, our eyes will never close again. Number two, at that time it was only in a certain space. It was only in the sea. But the moment they stepped out of the sea, so it wasn't just in time, but in space as well. Or if somebody did not go into the sea, or maybe as some Jews were still crossing the sea, they were still wearing those 3D goggles, and they had that vision. But those who had left on the other side already, they were coming out, their 3D goggles or glasses were taken away from them. Not physically, but that's what we mean. It was like removed from them. As they left, it's like you go out of an IMAX or something. You have, though, they give you these glasses. Not that I go to much IMAXs, but they have nature IMAXs that sometimes we go to in the Science Center. So you put on these glasses, or if you go to Disneyland, they give you certain shows, these IMAX glasses, the 3D glasses. And so when you go out of the theater, you have to drop it in the bag. Right? You can't go home with them. So that's the way it was when they went out of the sea. They had to return their glasses. So it was only in that time and in that space. Then it was removed. And when Mashiach will come, that revelation will be everywhere. The verse says, "V'niglo kvod Hashem," the glory of God will be revealed. V'ro kol basar, and all flesh will see. Where are the all flesh? It doesn't say when you will come on my holy temple mountain. It doesn't say only when we will visit the temple. V'niglo kvod Hashem, the glory of God will be revealed. V'ro kol basar, all flesh will see. Doesn't even limit it to the Jewish people. Then it was only the Jewish people. Those who went through the sea. The Egyptians, they drowned in the sea, but they weren't privy to this revelation. It's going to be all of humanity. Not only humanity. All flesh means even animals. Everybody will see, and everybody will see everywhere, and it will never stop. That's our connection. Now, why? What's the secret? What's going to happen? What happened in the sea? Prophecy was something that is very rare today's days. When we say very rare today's days, as we get closer to Mashiach, prophecy begins to creep back into the world, but there was an interruption on prophecy for many, many, many years. There used to be prophecy in the times of when the temple stood. Prophecy was a pretty common thing. There were a lot of people that had vision and had the ability to see things beyond the scope of this world. There were many, many prophets. Talmud says, I think, that there were prophets, kiflayim ki yotzei Mitzrayim, 2 times the amount of people that went out of Egypt. If I'm remembering correctly, that's what they say. Kiflayim, 2 times the people that went out of Egypt. So if we say, I don't know if it means, let's say it means only the men that were counted, which were 600,000. So let's say 1,200,000 prophets, 200,000 prophets. That's a lot of prophets. Obviously, not all of them lived at the same time. And most of these prophets did not write down their prophecies that we should know them. They were just personal prophecy. But it was very common. Then came a general concealment. We call it the time of exile. Temples were destroyed, especially the first temple, and prophecy became very rare. In the time of the second temple, you didn't really have prophets anymore. You had something called Ruach HaKodesh, holy intuition, a Holy Spirit would give people some access to higher consciousness and higher revelation, but not like on the level of prophecy. And then it dwindled during the entire Middle Ages. But then we were told that right before Mashiach comes, it starts coming back. And these were the great Kabbalists, and like the Holy Ari and the Baal Shem Tov and his successors, who can see is across the world. These were like, the Rebbe says it was prophecy, real prophecy. So prophecy is what is a prophet? A prophet means someone who has, a prophet is a seer, someone who can see. Someone who can see the divine realms, and someone who can communicate with the divine, can speak with the divine. No, someone that can go out of this realm into a higher realm. So that's not, we might think, what was the novelty of the splitting of the sea, of Kriyat Yamsuf, of that incredible moment of national prophecy. So you might think that the greatness of that moment was that everybody was turned into a prophet. It wasn't only these very sublime people, but that everybody became a prophet. True, that's one of the things. But really, it's more than that. It wasn't only that everybody became a prophet. It was also in the manner in which they experienced their prophecy. In what sense? When a prophet had a moment, or when a prophet merited to communicate with the divine, no matter, it doesn't make a difference which prophet, it was always an experience, an out-of-body experience. That means that the people, the prophets, would need to leave their bodies behind. Meaning to say, they would raise their consciousness above their physical bodies. So much so that one can see it visibly, because prophets would experience a complete physical shutdown. When a prophet would have a moment of prophecy or experience prophecy, they would begin to convulsions. Their bodies would fall to the ground because they couldn't handle it. It says so by Bilam, right? And even Jewish prophets, they would fall on the floor, they would roll, and then you can see that they're experiencing something very. It was very frightening to watch a prophet experience prophecy, because you saw that there was some kind of a friction between their body and their soul, because their soul was kind of now connecting to super energy, powerful, crazy spiritual energy. The bodies are not vessels to such energy. So the body would kind of need to be like, suspended. The body would like kind of disconnect. So they wouldn't die. Although I would imagine that a prophet is experiencing a near-death experience, in the sense that they're near death because of this detachment of soul and body. So the body gets all rattled up. The body gets all shaken up. That's how Maimonides describes prophecy. He says all prophets, that would happen to them. They would all, their limbs would shake and fall. They would, the words of Maimonides are that they would kind of shut down. Their physical sensors and receptors, and what you might call it, all their physical elements and their physical organs. I mean, not that the hearts would stop pumping and the mind would this, but would go into a certain state of suspension. And then the prophet would ascend to a higher state, and over there they would encounter the divine, the revelation. In other words, they would be lifted up above norms of time and space to experience what's beyond time and space. But it would involve a shutting down of their physical existence, an abandonment, if we might say, of their physical existence to experience a godly encounter. It was not so when the Jewish people went into the sea. When the Jewish people went into the sea, they walked in the sea and they were experiencing what more than even the deepest prophets saw. They saw a higher vision than anybody else, but they were perfectly comfortable in their bodies. No one lost it. It was a pure in-body experience. Their souls completely vested in their bodies. Like they are literally like they're strolling in the park. In that state, they looked around and they saw the infinite. They saw the deeper worlds. They saw angels. They saw everything bowing to God. They heard the music of the celestial worlds, and they weren't fazed. That was what was unique about that experience. It didn't call for this disconnect. Now, such an experience was extremely, extremely unique because, as we say, all prophets did not experience prophecy that way. Prophets would need to leave their body to a certain extent in order to experience a prophecy. The very fact that it says Holchu bayam, they walked. Literally, they were walking. In his prophecy, they would fall or lie on the ground or be sleeping, that kind of thing. But you couldn't walk. They walked. Now, when else did we have such an experience? Not by the giving of the Torah. By the giving of the Torah, when God came down, every time God spoke, their souls flew out of their bodies. Because it was prophecy. And their bodies could not handle it. The giving of the Torah, they couldn't handle it. But by the sea, they were able to. We'll see why in a moment. When they crossed the sea. Now, another time we would have a similar experience. Again, each time it's different, but it also in the general premise would be the same. It was inside the temple. When Jews would come visit the Holy Temple, when the temple stood, going into the temple opened up the person to an experience of what's beyond time and space. When you walked into the temple, your entire reality, your entire world suddenly dissolved. And you by standing in the temple just and being there, one can see infinity. One can see beyond time and one can see beyond space. I mean, obviously, everybody different, not everybody the same. Where do we know this from? The sages tell us that on the 3 pilgrimage holidays, 3 times a year, all your males, the 3 pilgrimage holidays called for the males to come. Women were not obligated to come. Doesn't mean they didn't go. Most of the women would go along. Just weren't obligated. But women would come along for the holidays. Jerusalem was packed with all the families. So they also had that experience. What does it say? It should be seen. So the sages say, just like when we came to the temple, we were being scanned by God. Just like we came to be seen, to be examined. Imagine God's eyes in the temple. God is everywhere, but particularly manifesting in the temple. And as a person walked into the temple, boom, they were scanned by God. Every single person. Sages say, just like you came to be scanned, so you also came to scan. Kach lirois, to see. Just like one was seen, so too one came to be seen. Just like one came to be seen, so too you came to see. What the sages are saying, we had spectacular vision inside the temple. The temple was kind of a place where the beyond time and space, where the infinite met the finite, where heaven and earth kissed. So when you walked into the temple, you didn't just see the earthly reality, you heard, saw, and experienced worlds beyond. The Rebbe says something very strong in a discourse that, like, he says, just like when God, the sages compare, just like we came to be seen, so too we came to see. So just like God, when he's seeing us, you can't hide anything from him. Obviously, we understand. When God scanned the person, you couldn't come there and cover your head and make believe that, and deceive yourself that God doesn't see. God saw the person with all our faults, and all of our hidden secrets were exposed in front of God. That's why when everybody you came, you did real tshuva, because you knew you're not hiding anything. When you're coming in for that tri-yearly scan, boy, oh boy, did it a day before there was some deep soul reckoning. Because you want to cleanse yourself. Shouldn't be so ashamed in front of God, because he knows all your secrets, the secrets of secrets. You're standing there completely naked in front of God. He can see every single thing through and through. As we say in Tanya, boichein kloyos v'leiv. He's scanning the kidneys and the heart. Deep scan. Sees everything. So too, the Rebbe says, when we saw, we also saw everything. Just like we can't hide anything from God, God couldn't hide anything from us. He's seeing, we're seeing. That means basically, the word the Rebbe says is we got to see even the light that's before the tzimtzum. That's what it really meant. Going to the temple. It was like to see God, to see the divine, whatever. And over there as well, they walked around in the temple. They said hi to each other. While they were experiencing that, they were very in tune with their bodies as well. It was not escape. It was not. Yeah, there were moments in the temple when people bowed, and the bowing was an even deeper experience. And they fell flat, and they're like the nullification of self. But that was not the general most of the time that you spent in the temple. They were very much present in time and space, yet they weren't limited by the boundaries of time and space. They were able to see beyond it and experience beyond it. It says that we're kind of equal. The sea, the holy temple. Now there's a third one. From all the prophets who experienced prophecy, and they would completely melt away in the prophecy, there's only one exception. And that's Moshe. Moshe had prophecy. God says, I speak to him like a person speaks to a friend. Moshe did not flinch. Moshe did not become disoriented when he spoke to God. He didn't lose sense of time and space. Moshe was fully grounded when he spoke to God. And the reason why Moshe was different than all other prophets was because Moshe's body was a full receptacle for God. Moshe's body was so holy, it was able to tolerate the full truth of God without it disintegrating. Other prophets did not have that same kind of a refined body. Their level of holiness of their bodies was not on par with their soul. So as their souls went into this higher consciousness, their body couldn't handle it. So the bodies would lose it. And obviously, I'm talking about, obviously, if to realize that every single experience over here was different, because the type of revelation in each place was not all the same. The sea was one. The sea had its level of revelation. The Sinai, the temple had its level of revelation. Prophets had each prophet. It says no two prophets ever prophesied the same. Every prophet's experience was, it's me, and I know what he wants, so he's gonna make me crazy until I answer him. So we're gonna have to shut it. It's for a very good thing he's calling me. No, just bring it here. Thank you. We just put it on silent. That's the way to deal with this. So it actually wasn't him. That. See, I'm not a prophet at all. See, exposed over here in front of everybody. So every prophet's experience was different. But what Moshe has in common with the splitting of the sea, together with the experience in the Holy Temple, is that there was the experience of prophecy was very comfortable. That's the point. They were comfortable in their bodies during that experience. What's the reason? And the reason for it is an amazing, very deep idea. And that is that in all these instances, the very nature, especially in the temple and at the sea, the divine became natural. And when you're experiencing something natural, nothing, it's when you're going to experience something unnatural that the body interferes, because the body is not tuned into that unnatural experience. It's not natural to the body, obviously. So since the body is going into an experience that's above nature, the body can't handle it. So the body has to shake off. What happened at the sea is that it was the higher realms revealed themselves into this world, or God was revealed in this world, to the point where in the space of the sea, the infinite was the natural. In the temple, it was a different nature. You walked into the temple, you walked into a place that's not governed by the same rules of the rest of the world. The rest of the world, time and space is very stiff. In the temple was a place where there were pores in time and space all over. And the infinite light that's beyond time and space is the nature of the environment itself. So when you went into such a place, your entire reality changed. You were in a different realm. When a prophet is experiencing prophecy, the natural world that they're in is the world of limitations of time and space. It's because of some refinement, some elevated consciousness. It's because of their higher levels of meditation and concentration that they can lift themselves up. They can lift their consciousness, their souls up from the natural environment and enter into a higher realm, a different zone. So there's a part of the person that can go there, and there's a part of the person that can't go there. So that part of the person that doesn't have that level of refinement remains outside of it. And therefore, when it feels that energy, whatever it is, it just it has convulsions or whatever it is, and loses itself. So an experience of prophecy is an abnormal experience. The question, however, is why was it that at the sea? How is it that the sea was the Red Sea? It's we can find it. There's a certain location. It's part of the world of time and space, part of this physical creation. How is it that that suddenly the nature in that place was the divine? How did that happen? So the answer to that is, and the same is in the temple, the answer to that is that before God created the world, in the space that the world is in in this space that we all inhabit, which is a space in which there's time and space, if you might say, what was present within this space? Only God, only the infinite. Let's call it the infinite light, like the Kabbalists call it. The infinite light was everywhere. That means that what was natural in that time, before there was a world, the natural condition before God created the world was to experience the Ein Sof. No one existed but God. But imagine if God would create one being. Let's say Hashem would create one human, one being, one angel, one being, in order to witness that realm, that we can have someone who can witness the pre-state of creation, what was before the world, that God filled all space. If God was to create a being, allowing him, we might even argue that Adam and Eve, Adam, when he was actually created the first time before he sinned, was actually getting to see that kind of state of existence of pre-creation, where God's light is everywhere. That's what it says. He saw tremendous. Okay, but let's say maybe not, because even he was impacted by what we call the tzimtzum, the contraction. But generally, first there was the infinite light, which means the most natural thing was God. If one was to speak of or to, at that time, introduce into that pure world of Ein Sof, introduce a limited entity, a limited creature, a limited being who exists in time and in space, in the infinite expanse of beyond time and beyond space. That would raise some eyebrows. In other words, it would be the most absolutely impossible, incomprehensible entity that there is a creature, there is some being that exists within some kind of a construct of time and space, because the natural is the infinite. When the infinite light was turned on, nature is the Ein Sof, is infinite, is infinity. The unnatural is a world, is a finite, is a space with limits and boundaries, and then that would be like an amusing thing. Like, how is that possible even? It wouldn't make any sense. It would be completely an abnormality. Now, what happened? There is a concept called in Kabbalah called tzimtzum, contraction, which the contraction is, imagine like this powerful godly wind. Imagine that, just a powerful wind, a dark wind. It's like this enormous darkness that blows and somehow blows the infinite light back into its source. That's what the tzimtzum is, a resuction. God sucks his light back into the source and removes the infinite light. That's an abnormality. How's that happen? But God can do anything, so he does that. The infinite is removed. And the outlines of time and space are brought into existence, which is in Kabbalah describes it's vessels and kalim and sephirot, but really the concept of kalim, of vessels, which are that limit the light. What happened once God did introduce the tzimtzum, which is this concealment of his infinite light, the story changed. Whoever is planted inside this construct, this is our nature. Our nature is time and space. We can't conceive at all something that's truly infinite. And if we do conceive infinity is like a wow. Something that never ends, doesn't have a beginning, it doesn't end, something that is all everything and nothing at the same time, something that is It just, the mind can't conceive it. Something that doesn't have any rules and can encompass all the impossibilities, it's impossible. So we know, because we know that God exists and we know about it, but we marvel at it. If we think about it, we marvel about it. It's an abnormality. See, all prophets, every time someone experienced prophecy from the beginning of time until Mashiach, the general point of these are all people and beings who are essentially post-Tzimtzum creatures, post-contraction beings, who were born in the world of limitation and boundaries and time and space. So their first perception of reality is time and space. When they experience prophecy, it means that because they're refining and they obviously sense that there must something set them off to explore and to seek and to search and to want to connect to something that's outside of this construct. And when God sees their efforts, God makes a little hole in time and space and gives them a ray of beyond time and space. And that's the revelation in which they have an encounter with the infinite being. But that is so shocking, that is so abnormal, as we said earlier, that it's the most unnatural thing. Because, let's understand why. That's because once the Tzimtzum came and hid the infinite light, the entire the very definition of existence changed. We have a whole, our basic sense of reality. Reality became definable, limited definitions, which make up the construct of what we live in. The fabric of our existence is of time and space, and time and space itself has thousands and thousands, or we'd say myriads of levels of how constricting the time and space is. But it's all within these definitions and limitations and boundaries. So we are essentially in a world of boundaries and definitions. So most people remain in those boundaries and can never leave those boundaries. And then you have unique individuals that, because of the merit and hard work and refinement and whatever else, merit that God gives them a window and helps them see into the infinite. But when they're seeing the infinite, it's wow. That's something completely goes against the very substance, or their very sense of reality, of basic reality. It's like something, and that's the shocker of it, and that's what knocks them out of their existence. When the Jewish people went into the sea, as soon as they walked into between those two waters, they came into a zone where the entire Tzimtzum was removed. That's the idea of tearing open the sea. Tearing open the sea means that Tzimtzum that blocks the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, which was present before existence, which was reality before existence, was suddenly, they entered into that state. So what happened? Now we have to understand how in the world did their bodies and everything not disintegrate in the infinite light? That's not the question. But that's for another time. That's not what I'm dealing with right now. But what we're saying is they entered into the experience of the purity of Ein Sof light like it was before God created the world. And what happened then? Beyond time and space, the infinite is the natural. That's reality. So there was nothing to get excited about. They just saw existence as existence truly is from God's perspective. The temple was also like that. Because God dwells in the temple, Hashem dwells in the temple. When we say Hashem dwells in this temple, it means all the levels of godly light, all the way to the pre-tzimtzum light, essentially is revealed in the temple. So you went into the temple. Moshe is one person who's not a post-tzimtzum soul. He's a pre-tzimtzum soul. That's why it says, she pulled him out of the water. Moshe was, he's brought out from the other side. So Moshe Rabbeinu, to him, the Ein Sof is the natural. To him, it was more wondrous when he saw a creature and a being who is living so stuck in their own existence and they're not seeing the infinite light. It's like what Moshe was completely needed to be marveled on is how people can be living in such constricted consciousness when God is everywhere. It was like, hello, like, and that's the vision of Moshe. So there was nothing crazy. It just but however, here's the Chiddush in the days of Mashiach. The Chiddush of the day, the novelty of the days of Mashiach, the days that we are about to come to, is that this, when we went into the sea and we went into the temple, we still had to go to a specific place to have this experience. Or as we said, it was revealed in a specific time. That itself shows that it was a limited revelation. At the time of the redemption, which is going to come after all the work of all the mitzvot, and all the good deeds, and all the Torah, and everything that we've done for thousands of years to purify the world, to refine the world, and to pull on the infinite light, then suddenly the world is going to be privy to the Or Ein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum. And as natural as it is for us today, as natural as it is for us today to see each other and to see physicality and to see time and space, to see all, and again, things of time, we don't see time, but we see entities living in time and experience time and experience space. As natural as it is to us to experience, to live in this world in this manner, that's how natural it's going to be to see infinity. It's going to be literally like physical sight. And it's not only going to be the nature of our souls, it's going to be the nature of our body. All of existence is going to experience itself as part of and as included in the infinite. So we're not going to bat an eyelash That's why the verse says, in the days of Mashiach, your children, your sons, your daughters, your maids, your servants, meaning everybody will all be prophets. Prophecy is going to be everywhere because talking to God and communicating to God will be natural. All the blockages and all the curtains and all the barriers and all the walls and all the that make up the millions of layers and layers and layers that create the limited construct and that make things exist only present in this time, and that what once was or what will be and all that is not accessible because we're living in the moment of time right now, in the experiences of space right over here. Will be with effortlessness. We will cross all those boundaries. And it will be so natural. Now, I'm going to give you now a simple example to that. It's not just example, it's an illustration of that. The fact that we have today's days tools that make it completely natural for me to talk. Used to be, in the early days when someone, how exciting was it for people who lived 150 years ago if they would watch someone actually get on a phone and talk to someone and hear a voice and they would be told that the person is in the next city. I'm not talking about like a walkie-talkie. I'm talking about a phone when person is here, one person is in England, the other person is in France. You mean you're talking to my cousin in France? Yeah. In England and France, they're not too far from it. And then you say, well, it's across the ocean. You're talking to someone in the United States. You're talking to it would be impossible. But remember when they came out, when people were able to start not just talking, but you were able to see the other person. Like remember the first time those, what was it? They had a special name that you made sure called. Now it was only like certain companies that did it. Then it became like everybody's, what was it? FaceTime. And before the FaceTime, I think it was some other, it was like crazy. But it's natural. It's technology. It's technology. It's going to be technology soon to unearth in every. But when you say it's technology, it's the technology of the world. In other words, we're unearthing within the world powers that are opening up the world to limitlessness. And that means that the world is moving to a place further, faster and faster and faster, where the finite and the infinite will converge. And it's not going to be through a miracle. It's going to be just nature. Am I saying technology is the fulfillment of this? Yes. V'ra'u kol basar. The whole point over here is that physical flesh will be able to see. It's not the ultimate fulfillment of this, but the idea that the nature of the world, that's the whole point over here, is that it has to be natural. Not a crazy experience, natural. But it's not because of the world. It's because of the convergence of God with the world. Since God is the real reality of time and space and the real reality of all of existence, nature eventually, and through the work that God had instructed us in Torah and mitzvot, we advanced the world to come to a place where where every finite being or finite entity is able to pull from within its finitude infinity. That's the convergence of the infinite and the finite. And just through nature. So obviously we're standing right now at the tip of the tip of the tip of the beginning of this. So we're used to thinking that this is going to be like an incredible spiritual experience. It's a convergence of the physical and the spiritual together. That's what it is. V'ro kol basar, all flesh will see. So how will that eventually impact us? It will obviously impact our physical eyes as well. It's not just, I'm saying it's not just machines. It's not just machines. But the fact that machines and technology is already pumping out the abilities to step out of the confinements of see, what is to say that we won't have an instrument very soon that can break the barriers of time and therefore take us into to literally see and talk to those of that which was in the past and that was in the future. I don't know where that code is, that once you break that thing, you're actually existing in the place where everything is existing at once. Who is to say that 20 years from now we won't be in such a place? Not through a miracle. But this is what the Kabbalists have told us all along. See, this is it's a wonder. That's the thing. When you look into the teachings of Hasidism, and when you look into the deeper teachings that were set to us a long time ago, and they're speaking about this, that the nature of the world is going to become one with the infinite, and that the experience of Ein Sof, of infinity, is not going to be something that is going to be, that is going to be superimposed upon us. But it's just going to be as a fully natural experience. So again, I'm not here to say that this is the, when I'm saying I'm not here to say, I'm saying explicitly that I don't believe that this is the everything of it. But what I am saying definitely is that this is of that experience of Mashiach. And particularly the emphasis that we're getting to experience going out of limitations of time and space, and it's not even causing us to it's just, I don't know, scientists every day are breaking new barriers and we're discovering new things. Yeah. But for thousands of years, the world was not privy to all of this. Why? Because they were not yet living in messianic times. This is Mashiach's times. And the wonder of Mashiach time is not that there will be godly revelation from above. The wonder of Mashiach's time is that all that godly revelation from above is going to be coming from below. The world itself is going to attach itself to the Ein Sof. How is the world going to attach itself to the Ein Sof? Only because we've removed the barrier that exists between the world and the Ein Sof. And how did we remove the barrier that exists between the world? Through the Torah and mitzvot, which thinned out that barrier more and more and more, and allows for the world itself to be uplifted into. So if I would say to you like this, in the days of the Baal Shem Tov can see what's happening in China. He was able to see across the world. And today you can also see what's happening in China. Okay, of course, he was able to see it because he was holy and spiritual and had that vision. You can see it because you have a tool. But that's what we're saying. The world is catching up to the holy. And you say, well, there's nothing to do with holy. It's just technology. Anybody can use it. And it can be used for bad things. Yeah, because people have not really realized it for bad things anymore. We're going to use it just for holiness and for godliness, because a powerful, powerful godly consciousness is going to accompany this. In other words, we are just right now at the, as I said earlier, at the cusp, at the very, very, very beginning of this incredible explosion. We're looking ahead at this and we're wondering, wow, with this godless environment that's outside, and we're going to enter into that, like what's going to be, and that's pretty frightening. But if we are to realize that at the same time that we are going to enter into that experience, we're also going to have the revelation of Melech HaMashiach. And we're going to have an incredible opening our eyes of understanding of Torah and so on and so forth. At the same time, nature itself and the world itself is going to open up to us whatever we have in terms of instruments and capabilities and abilities that we have now. We all understand that if the world, let me put it this way, if the world does not self-destruct, which it won't, if technology with AI and everything that it exists is going to build, construct, and break out and achieve, right? More and more and more. Think about where we're going to be in 300 years from now. Think about that. Can anybody even begin to imagine where we're going to be? It's not so long, 300 years ago. In the olden days, when you thought about what's going to be in 300 years, it was going to be pretty much the same. The wagon was going to be a little bit more. I'm sure people were going to invent some things, but it would be pretty much the same. Now, we can't even begin to imagine what's going to be 30 years from now. Because the exponential growth of these things are just unimaginable. So where's it going to be 300 years ago from now? If we can already speak to people across the world, if you can already see people, if you can already, I don't even know a tiny bit about what technology is already available and already present, and what the U.S. military is using already, and what things are being that are capabilities that are just beginning to be developed, And what is that? What is that? If not for the infinite being discovered within the finite. The infinite potential that's within the finite coming out. But this itself, that this barrier is now so thin that we can cross it, that we can use our physical created tools, we can use to access at such levels. We were told about this already in Torah years ago, that the experience of the Ein Sof is going to start becoming natural. So it's pretty exciting. And let's keep in mind the holiness. This wasn't at all of the class that I was going to give tonight. This was just going to be the first 10 minutes. And but okay, this is what we learned tonight. This is where it went. This is probably what needed to be said. Definitely some interesting points to ponder. And at which point is suddenly the the godly consciousness going to kick in into all of this. That's going to be the beautiful moment when everybody will turn to each other and go, huh? And it's going to come from from the world. That's the cool thing. Because if it's coming from God and not from the world, it will always be other like. It won't be us. It will be on. But it's so I don't really know where else this class, like, I don't even know how I found how I landed over here in this class, but somehow we landed over here. It's pretty interesting. L'chaim, everyone. L'chaim. We're going to talk about Shmini and 8 and how the 7 and 8 are converged together and how this has to do dafka with the avodah and galut and so on and so forth. But may we merit the Geula, may we merit already to see and understand and appreciate that we're living in awesome times. When we keep our minds in a healthy place, focused, readying ourselves, preparing ourselves, learning more Torah, doing new mitzvahs. Because this is the real thing, the real producers of all of this are the yeshiva guys learning in yeshiva, the mitzvah doers doing mitzvot. That's really where it's being produced. The labs are literally at the very, very, very end of the what do we call it, of the assembly line for this to happen. The huge multi-billion-dollar companies that are researching all of this, that's literally at the very end, because there's tremendous amount of spiritual work that needed to be done for this connection to be made, for this opening to be made. I think so. Okay, we'll leave it by that.